It's Gary Kaufman from You're Overthinking It. I sat down with Michael Kagan a couple of days ago. Michael Kagan runs the immigration clinic at UNLV, Boyd Law School, and there's a bit of stuff that's been happening around immigration, so I wanted to get his take. Here's our interview. We've got a lot to talk about, but the first thing I want to know is how are you doing? First of all,
Hmm.
hang on a second.
Hmm.
Let me introduce you. Michael Kagan is what is your title? Chairman?
I'm Joyce Mack, professor of law at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Clinic.
Yes, and director of the UNLV Immigration
Okay.
Clinic.
As the director of the immigration clinic, I have learned that he does not take any time off except when he has to go to LA to be with his kid. And even then, he's still sitting here with me doing an interview. But how are you in particular doing? Like you work in the immigration space. The immigration space is crazy right now. How
Yeah.
is your mental state?
My dentist says that I grind my teeth too much
Ah,
from tension,
ah,
uh, and that's probably an indication. It's a very stressful time. There's a part of me, though, that you're not the first person who's asked that I feel selfish even answering this because,
mm,
in so many different ways that we'll probably talk about, and some we may not get the chance to talk about, um, it's not like I am the most at risk person around here, right? In what's going on, but it's extremely stressful to be trying to do something about it. There's
mhm,
also a part that's satisfying that I find when I talk to people because my work as an attorney and as I would say as a concerned citizen in Las Vegas allows me to feel at least somewhat useful, not as useful as I'd like to be, but to do something about this. And I know there's a lot of people who feel the exact same way and are not as sure what they can do
mm.
to be useful. And so I guess I'm fortunate in that way. But that's my answer. It's hard to take any downtime, even though it's necessary.
I try to be useful by doing my Substack, right?
Yeah.
But I still feel like I need to be out there somehow.
Hmm. Yeah, I think everyone has to have a role, right? And I think the thing is, well, we should probably talk about this. Public opinion, um, protesting, writing, persuading, informing. Actually, those will be the only things that save us in the end. They're actually what make, say, a brief that my students or I might file in court even relevant, because the only reason that could matter is because the people, not just now but over centuries, have demanded that rule of law should matter, among other things, right? So like those things do matter. They are. I don't. One thing I don't like that's entered our lexicon is that like the critique that, well, that's performative. You're damn right it's
Mhm,
right,
mhm.
because I mean, well, you come from a theater family, so I'm gonna tell you this, but like performance matters to human
Performance
beings.
matters, right.
Um, So we're probably not even the only species for whom that's true, actually. But that is actually how we organize our society, right? So all those things matter. So coming out, protesting, writing your congressman, being loud, actually, all those things actually really matter. In fact, at some level, they're all we have.
So, um, people going out, people getting angry, are you seeing more people, especially in Las Vegas, kinda coming out? Do you see them changing their minds, or are people just sort of, like, stultified, like they don't know what to do?
Probably all of the above, but I think that people are definitely coming out. I think the turnout for the protests
Mm.
was it this past weekend? God, time blurs,
I
but
know, well, you were traveling,
it was a
so
week
yeah,
ago. It was a
right.
week ago, right? I was at the one. I spoke at the one at the noon at the courthouse on Las Vegas Boulevard, but that was one of only multiple protests that were organized around the Vegas Valley that weekend.
Mhm.
Um, I actually lost track of the full list. Indivisible's been doing an incredible job
Yes, they
organizing
have.
that. And But like I've been to a lot of protest. Vegas is not a big protest city, right? Like
Mhm.
so, um, the bigger protests come out in other cities than in Vegas. I thought this was pretty big, particularly if you look at the number of protests. And it was pretty spontaneous, right? So like it wasn't. I think it was probably smaller than No Kings, but more locations
Mhm.
and. Um, so I think people are pretty pissed, and I think that's a nationwide thing. People are also very anxious too, especially people who realize that they might be more of the type, or people in their family might be more of the type that ICE might target. So there's a lot of fear that spreads from this. And then it's backed up. It's not just anecdotal about protests. It's backed up by opinion polls, right? Like the public does not like what they are seeing,
Mhm.
and I do think that matters. um, will it be enough? We shall see. But public opinion still matters, and I think there's a challenge of that we have been struggling with since January 2025 of how do we balance the reality that this is fascism on the march with also realizing we can do something about it, because there's a nihilism that's I sometimes see and hear from people who will just say, well, he'll just ignore the rule, he has all the guns, what can you do? uh,
Mhm.
and therefore you just stay home and watch football. uh, but um, but I don't think we're there yet, and public opinion and protest actually still matter, and there you can see signs of where they have influence.
Okay, so two things. First of all, it's kind of amusing to me that people would stay home from violence to watch violence on TV.
Oh, okay. This
But
interview's off. I'm not here for that because I'm a
I
football watcher
I
myself,
am
and
too. Wait a second.
Nick,
No, no, no.
I didn't realize you were going to touch on
My
that. That wasn't part of our agreed subject matter.
my journey was I loved football, favorite sport. And then I started reporting on CTE. And then I would watch football and watch people get hurt and be like, "Oh my god, I'm watching people slowly kill themselves. Like this is not Tony Dorsett now has dementia, right?" Um so it kind of creeps me out when I'm watching football. It's an
Yeah.
incredibly violent, dangerous game, but I still watch it. Um,
I guess to be really honest with you, it's probably for me in the same category as eating meat, in something that I unabashedly love, but yet actually completely can see all of the very valid arguments against it.
yeah,
So I guess we're human,
we
and
are human.
that's if that's my worst vice, then you can judge me
So
as
one
well.
of the things I saw today, I think, is that Trump doesn't like the optics of this.
Yeah,
That
I saw that this
he's kind
morning.
of pulling back and
So,
going,
so glad. Yeah, I
right.
don't like the optics either.
But
Just,
it's first of all, I don't know what Stephen Miller. I think that Stephen Miller loves the optics of this. I think that he is the mastermind behind this. But but Trump doesn't like. He thinks that we can perhaps take all of the illegals off the street, all of the criminals off the street without going after regular people. The math does not add up, right?
right.
Like there's just a few people who have broken the law, much less committed a felony, right? Um,
Hmm.
and we knew this was always going to happen, that if they're going to take that many people off the street, and Stephen Miller's talking like 100 million people, that is a third of our population. And uh, right, and so we're going to see people who are here, who are undocumented, who are here, who have green cards, who were born here. We're just going to see all the brown people be picked up. Period.
Which is close to what they're doing in Minnesota. I
Right.
mean, and not only there, but most intensely there, just the harassing of anyone who looks brown. I mean, and the racial dynamics of Minnesota are a little different than here, right? And especially when it comes to immigration, because of the Somali immigrants, for example.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, Trump doesn't like that people aren't loving it, and I think one of Trump's skills, right? Like he's a weird guy, right? Because he's like dumb as a rock in certain ways, but actually quite genius in other ways, and all the worst ways. So
Mhm.
he is very sensitive, I think, to what the crowd likes and loves, right? And that's part of his skill set. So I think he's sensing that actually the public isn't loving this, um, and but you basically explained it already, right? Like they could what can be done. Anyone who knows immigration policy would be able to tell them this. If they wanted to just deport people who've been arrested for a crime, that could be done out of sight,
Mm.
right? And we could debate the merits of that, whether it should be only violent crimes, whether like one pending charge for a DUI should lead to someone's deportation. But there is an established, actually extremely efficient mechanism set up by which they can take people from jails shortly after. Anyone who's booked into a jail could be handed over to ICE. And basically, this is a lot of the deportation system in Nevada, not all of
Mhm.
it, but a significant part of it. And that can happen out of sight, out of mind for most of the public. And also, that allows most of the public, even including many other immigrants, to feel, oh, this it won't be about me or mine, because as long as we don't ever get arrested, and I know as a lawyer, nobody ever thinks they will be until they are, but they. But that could work. But if you're talking mass deportation of anyone who's undocumented, much less when they are talking about 100 million, they're just talking about racial cleansing,
Mhm.
because that no one, like even the most outlandish MAGA theories don't have that number of undocumented immigrants in the United States. So that means they're just talking about black and brown people who've been naturalized in the last 30 years or something. So they're then like that. Trump is not aware of is and doesn't enter his sort of general consciousness is the degree to which people are integrated into our communities, so that there's not a place where like all of the undocumented immigrants are, because you could just go take them. Now I think Stephen
Ah,
Miller actually does know that, and I think
right.
that's a difference and a bit of a friction. So Trump has always struck me as basically is a barstool racist, right? He is the kind of guy you can meet in Queens, New York, right?
Mm.
Like they and always has been. But that kind of person has a lot of offensive ideas, but they're not necessarily organized into a nuanced ideology. Whereas you have people like Stephen Miller, it's very immersed in a extremely developed theoretical ideology that has origins that go back to the darkest places of the early 20th century in terms of white supremacist theory,
Mhm.
uh, replacement theory, and so on. Trump's there's a lot, those Venn diagrams overlap a lot,
Mhm.
clear, but there's little things about that are different. Wherein Trump, being the barstool racist, will just flippantly say, "We're just going to go get all the people we don't like. Why is that so difficult?" Stephen Miller actually understands why it's so difficult, but I think he thinks that it's a good thing to accelerate that racial and fascist conflict.
Yeah. You mentioned how people are being picked up and put into the immigration system here in Nevada, mostly,
Yeah,
which brings us to 287G. I
yeah.
saw. Explain to people what a 287G is.
287G is, first of all, I just wish, generally speaking, we would stop labeling things by statute numbers. I
Okay.
am a law professor. I tell my students I can't remember the numbers. I don't test them on it. I don't know why, for the public, to get people to understand what's going on, we should say, well, 287G, Section 287G.
Well,
You know that,
okay.
right? Don't you
Right.
read that before bed every night? Anyway,
Not every night, but I know it because of you, right?
thank you so much. But so it is really part of a machinery of linking up local police with ICE, so that the suction valve of the deportation pipeline. So think the deportation pipeline is, how do we take a person who was once walking around on the street living a life and suck them into this machinery that will take them from the streets of Las Vegas to deportation to wherever. Okay, that is a pipeline, kind of like an oil pipeline. And like
Mhm.
any pipeline, there has to be an intake valve, a suction valve, right? So what people envision as a suction valve might be ice agents, where we're seeing videos of this, ice agents going and grabbing you off the street. That's the suction valve taking you into this pipeline. But the most common suction valve over the last 15 to 20 years, and still in Nevada, is actually your own local police.
Mhm.
Now, 287G is one part of that. And in 287G, the local police actually do work for ICE, free work. So Nevada taxpayers contributing resources to ICE. And what it means, so that means metro officers or City of Las Vegas marshals or whoever joins these programs, um, serving essentially as ICE officers at the front line, that suction valve. Now, what it means in practice is that we're thwarting the criminal justice system for low level crimes, especially
Mhm.
because if you are arrested for a DUI, what is likely to happen is you will be handed over to ICE before you even get to court.
Mm.
A lot of our cases are like that, that their criminal record consists of an arrest with a pending case where our clients are anxiously telling them, I've got an appearance in justice court or for the DUI. They may or may not have a defense to that, but that the DUI is like just never going to be resolved because they just were handed over to ICE, and that's how that works. And about 70% last year, at least through the fall, um, of arrests in Las Vegas were that suction valve. Now, 30% is still a lot, and it's growing. Where ICE just grabs people off the street or outside their homes, they do that too, and that's actually inching up. The other thing is who they take out of that valve. Like that suction valve can have a filter on it. Do they want Metro to turn over people who are arrested for more serious crimes or have a previous criminal record before this arrest?
Mhm.
That might mean they have a conviction,
Mhm.
or any arrest will do.
Mhm.
Right now, it's any arrest will do.
Mhm.
So that's why in ICE detention, the majority in ICE detention don't have a conviction, right? Because they're taking 30% off the street. And then even the ones they're taking from the jails are usually arrested on a misdemeanor, which is why they're being theoretically let go by the local police. And they're being handed over to ICE and put into ICE detention before they even get to go to court on whatever they are arrested for.
And
I
they
mean,
can
we
be
even have
arrested.
DA decides not to go forward with the charges, but they're still handed over to ICE.
Okay, and they could be arrested for, like, a busted taillight, like, they could just be pulled over
Yeah,
and
a little less so than it used to. That was a big concern. We probably spoke during the first Trump
mhm.
administration. Was a big concern in the first Trump administration. Now, the decriminalization of most
Ah,
traffic tickets in
right,
Nevada
right.
has made that a little less likely, but there are still some traffic offenses for which you can be arrested, and we've seen so we have still seen pure traffic, not DUI based arrest, but that's less than it was in the first Trump administration. When you're absolutely right, an unpaid ticket for a broken taillight would lead you to deportation.
Okay, good, thank you for reminding me of that law. One of the things that that strikes me with this 287G, and then we'll move on, is that, it is voluntary, right? The police
Yeah.
can or cannot cooperate. I saw somebody in Pennsylvania, I think it was Bucks County, Pennsylvania, saying, "We're not honoring 287G agreements anymore." And the
Hmm.
question that I have had since LA, actually, since Trump sent troops into LA, was why can't local police stop these masked men from kidnapping people? Because that's what it is at its core, right? We don't know who these men are. We
Yeah.
don't, there have been impersonators who have kidnapped people and then, taken them hostage.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and shouldn't our local police be keeping us safe? What's your answer to that?
So two different issues that are really, maybe even three different issues that are really important to tease out. So the first is 287G and any cooperation where local police basically do the work for ICE. That's always going to be voluntary. Um, Under our federal system of government, the federal government has there's federal supremacy of the law, but they can't conscript state and local resources to enforce them to do their work for them. And so that's all voluntary, and local police chiefs, including our sheriff, who act like, oh, I had no choice or I was bullied into it. They're just showing that, oh, you're easily bullied. That's it. Or you like it.
Or you like
Maybe
it.
you like
Yeah.
it. Right. So they like what that's so it's one of those two things, but that's one thing. So put that to the one side. Now, your more profound question, the one is on everyone's mind because of Minnesota, which is, can the Minnesota police, the Minneapolis police, stop and protect people from the violent occupation of ICE officers? And I think with that, I think I'm going to tease this out further. Um, so the first of all, let's talk about the masked unidentified guys jumping out of vans, which was something we saw a good deal of in 2025, where you don't know who they are. I think that local police have a very urgent obligation to interfere with that, right?
Hmm.
To find out, to arrive at the scene and find out who these people are and protect people. Now, that is the problem with masking of law enforcement, right? Like even in the laws of war, where soldiers camouflage themselves, they're still supposed to wear insignia on their uniforms, so that actually, if someone looked at them closely, even in the hidden in the brush, you would be able to tell, oh, that's a United States soldier, right? They should not be like this mass thing, right? And that, I think, local police sometimes did not take seriously their obligation to protect from kidnapping, right?
Hmm.
Because like that's the thing, like the whole thing we see on TV about when the cop shows up and they show you their badge, the whole reason they show their badge is that I am supposed to deal with you differently
Right.
if you are a official law enforcement officer rather than if you are a random thug.
Right.
So that, but that's that. But that's actually not what we're mostly seeing in Minnesota. That's even more alarming, I think, in some ways, because these people are identified. They are dressed to go into Fallujah,
Hmm.
and but it is pretty clear who they are, right?
Hmm.
Like that's this is a problem. So this is a very fraught and complicated area of law, and that I hate explaining to people because it makes me sound like I'm just the lawyer explaining why you can't do what any moral person would think should be done. Because in our system of federal government, where we have armed police and National Guard, who both answer to state and local authorities and to the federal government, as we have some experience in the United States, there is a potential for that to turn into a civil war if the say state authorities resist federal law. So it actually is not a simple thing to say why Minneapolis police need to use their force against the federal government force when the federal government is doing all these things. Now, this is actually like all areas of law, there are exceptions. One of the exceptions is if the if federal officers are clearly not acting under color of law, so if they're doing clearly things that are clearly outside their duties, as has definitely happened in Minnesota, the local police could step in.
Like going door to door and pulling people out of their homes. Is that without a warrant? Like,
Oh,
okay,
God.
okay, I
I
just
mean,
asked a complicated question.
like,
Sorry.
I mean, maybe they, like, or doing certain kind of operations that for which there's no even plausible federal authority. Beating people on the street who are already down and clearly no longer a threat
Mhm.
is beyond federal authority. There may be cases like that where they could intervene, but I think we have to face some other reality, actually. And I think Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, has actually been quite frank about this, that one of the things about this invasion and occupation of Minneapolis that we have to understand is the numbers, right? And that the number of federal officers sent there, the scale of what's going on there is different. I think even from
Mhm.
what happened in Los Angeles or Chicago, they have I've seen as many numbers as many 3,000 DHS officers to a city where the full time police force is 600.
Ah,
Right. So, and that I've seen tabulations like even if you take all of the cities in the region and add up all their police forces, it's less than the number of DHS officers sent. So, like, they can't get into a shooting war, right? And with the ICE officers, and of course, to avoid that, that may be there's good reason to think that actually is what Stephen Miller wants. So, for
to
that
do the
reason,
Insurrection Act if they get into a shooting war.
Protection Act, and just generally to actually launch a civil war in the United States to remake the country. Um, and I look, I think that before we get to that, that is a good reason why do, why the best resistance to it may be nonviolent, might be mocking and laughing at them. A lot of the things Minnesotans are doing. Is it 100% effective? No, right? People are lost. People are taken. Um,
Renee
it's
Good
really
was
bad. But
killed
we don't have
because
a solution that's like we don't have like a take this pill and the disease goes away in 2 hours. We don't have that. But people protesting and resisting and standing by their neighbors nonviolently actually might be the best resistance. And But people will be lost in that process.
yeah, Renee Good was murdered for
Right.
mocking a police
Exactly.
officer
Yes.
or mocking a DHS employee wearing body armor. Yes,
Mocking while lesbian. Yes, exactly.
yes,
More like
mocking while lesbian. Yes.
yeah.
Um, okay, so we talked about Trump not liking the optics. Interestingly, in LA, it was Justice Kavanaugh who said, "Oh, you could go ahead and just stop people because they're
Yeah.
brown." And people have been calling them Kavanaugh stops. And I have
Mhm.
heard tell that Kavanaugh doesn't like that. That there have been a
Yes.
few things that he said on the, in a footnote or on the bench that indicates that he doesn't like that. Talk to me a little bit about that, and then we'll move
Yeah.
on.
He issued, and I think this is again an indication that actually public discourse, the First Amendment, ridicule, memes, they matter. They get under their skin and they
Mhm.
make some people self-conscious. Kavanaugh issued these are all concurring opinions. But like they're not like really judgments of the court, but he issued a second opinion that he didn't really have to. It wasn't really necessary to the case that he was deciding, where he like wanted to clarify that actually you're not supposed to be using race as the reason for arrest. And it's like, Brett, we're old enough to remember when you said the opposite, but I think it was clear that like he had gotten kind of the message. I think that this goes, I mean, we're going to have to see. I am very unconfident. I actually fear the worst with the Supreme Court generally,
Mm,
but the story's not finished yet, right? They did issue a relatively positive decision about National Guard deployment. I think that a lot of the majority on the Supreme Court believes in strong executive power, the unitary executive, but I think that they also come from a conservative tradition that presumes a kind of a more small c conservative, responsible sort of like adult in the room use of that executive power. And so there's a lot of shocks the conscious stuff going on, and we'll have to see how they react. I don't predicting success. I'm not actually would bet on the opposite, but I think there's at least some glimmer of hope that it's not done yet. And the
okay.
Brett Kavanaugh's kind of wait, maybe I didn't quite mean that. How could you have misunderstood me? Opinion, I think is an indication that some of the what's going on is actually worrying some of those justices.
Good. There's just a couple more things I want to talk about, and then we'll end this. Um, uh, Maine. One of the things you said on social media a few days ago was to remind us that DHS did not have the manpower
Yeah,
to hit every city everywhere, and that
their
as I
manpower
see
is
it, they're
growing.
sort of
Yeah,
swarming like toddler soccer players. Like everybody's going to the
yeah.
ball, and then another ball. The ball goes here. So now they're thinking of going to Maine. Why? Why would they go to Maine? It seems like not the biggest city in the world or biggest state. Biggest population state in the world, and also. Um, is that something that we should take to heart, that perhaps they don't have the manpower to hit every state, every city?
Okay, so I also said last year that one of the results of the big beautiful bill with the massive recruitment of and hiring that they're doing eh, is that they would be gaining the capacity to do what they did in Southern California in multiple cities at once.
Mhm.
Right. So one of the things that was happening when they were doing this in the LA area is they were busing people in to Los Angeles, ICE officers into Los Angeles to mobilize, right? Which meant that everything they did in Los Angeles might have meant someone not getting deported from Las Vegas or from somewhere else because they were actually having to move officers around. That remains the case. I mean, this is any military commander will tell you this. Even the largest militaries in the world have limited resources, so where you deploy them, a soldier can't be in two places at once. And I think that
Mhm.
when given the numbers, 3,000 is a pretty significant number. That's and even running the normal deportation pipeline takes a lot of officers, and so there are limits. But they are hiring more, they are building more detention space all the time, and so their capacity to do large operations in multiple cities at once, or maybe one large operation and three mediums,
Mm.
will increase.
Okay.
Um, I just posted on my subs on Behind the Border, my Substack this morning, an accountability note about something I got wrong.
Mhm.
It was something I think you were right about, so you might enjoy reading it.
I
It's,
did.
but which is I definitely had a false theory last August about why they were targeting LA and Chicago. I have a new theory, given that I've disclosed my track record of being wrong, which is that they may have realized that they can make more spectacle and inflict more oppression in medium-sized cities than in the largest cities.
Mm.
So 3,000 officers goes a whole lot farther in Minneapolis than it does in Los Angeles, right? The like, I mean, what I hear from friends who live in Minneapolis is basically like all of life is taken over, as it is when
Mhm.
the city is placed under hostile military occupation. Whereas if you sent 3,000, now if you could, Los Angeles is, which is where I actually am right now, you could send 3,000 soldiers to occupy an area the size of Minneapolis in population, and I, might be able to go out for coffee with no effect on me where I
Right.
am, right? Because
Right.
it's such a vast area.
Right.
So I think they went to Portland, because we're talking about Maine now. Let's be confusing.
Right.
Portland, Oregon, and I'm wondering if they're realizing that they can actually do, because if they want to do this invasion occupation style operation, they might be able to do that more effectively in smaller and mid-sized cities than in the largest cities in the country. So that'd be another theory to watch, but I need to be modest about my theories on this.
There's also a large Somali population in Maine,
Yeah.
in Lewiston. We will follow up like every single time. I read your Substack. I read it this morning. Every single time something new happens, I'm like, oh, what does Kagan think about this? Um, so, and and also let's get out with a couple of wins here.
Hmm.
You One of the things
Yeah.
you keep posting is your students
Yeah.
at your immigration clinic actually are winning. So talk to me about
Yes.
that, and then we'll get out of here.
We had four people. Not all of the fist bumps are posted. We try to do fist bumps when we can, with our clients when they're released from detention. We don't get them all, but but we had four people released on Thursday, just on one day, and probably more where that came from. So I think this is important. I love bragging on my students, but I also think it is my responsibility as a law professor. I think it's our responsibility as a law school and as legal professionals to tell the public law still matters, but we also have to fight to keep it mattering if we think it's worthwhile. And the and you can go to court and say the federal government is holding someone uh, illegally without authority, and a judge will order them released, and they get released. That's still happening. I'm seeing this now. It is fragile.
Okay.
You have to warn that it's fragile. But that is why protest matters, right? And because it's what the judge can issue is a functionally a piece of paper. It's actually nowadays it's an email, but this email says preliminary injunction, release this person by noon tomorrow, right? And the government does it still
Still.
most of the time. But we're seeing
And
cracks. And so we have to keep that fight going. And I'm really glad that we have students who want to be trained in how to do that, who love doing it and are great at it. And they're doing, like my students are doing stuff that many experienced immigration lawyers don't do their entire career.
yeah, that's the best part for me when I see those wins that you post. Your students are the win is important for your students to know that they can make a difference and to keep going.
Yeah.
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 Excellent. Michael Kagan, thank you for joining me. I will talk to you again, and I will, of course, see you on socials and text and what have you. Thank you
Yeah.
very
My
much.
pleasure. Good to chat with you always, Carrie.
Good to chat with you. Talk to you later.
Bye bye.